Our journey starts at Mallaig, a little fishing port on the extreme west coast of the mainland of Scotland, exactly opposite Rum. This used to be a very busy port, and I think they used to smoke herring here, but in late years the trade has declined, and a lot of the fishing fleet doesn't go out anymore. It's still quite a busy port, and I think caters largely for visitors. There's the little white boat that takes visitors to Rum.
The island of Rum is at present owned by the Nature Conservancy Council. The island has a very interesting history, as some 60 million years ago molten lava was forced up through the sandstone which covered the west of Scotland and formed volcanoes. One island so formed was Rum. Gradually much of the lava was eroded away, but some still survives as the summit of Orville and Bloodstone Hill. On the hills of Askerville and Halliwell can be found many varieties of rock, including granite and the unique layered rocks. In the 10,000 years since the last ice age, during which Rum was covered by the Scottish ice cap, the island has developed a covering of alpine, bog and forest vegetation. Scrub birch and willow gave way to woodland of pine, hazel, aspen and oak. The high rainfall gave rise to the peat on the flatter ground. During early historic times, the greatest influence on Rum has been man. Stone Age man lived there, and since then the original forest has been destroyed by burning, felling and grazing. The Vikings came to Rum, reputedly bringing with them primitive sheep and some ponies. The ponies on Rum today still resemble the Scandinavian type of pony found in Iceland, also colonized by the Vikings. Ponies on Rum were recorded in literature in 1774, when there were an abundance of mares and a necessary number of stallions. In 1775 we read that the ponies were very small but of eminent beauty, and in 1769 horses were reared for sale on Rum. They are a hardy and high mettle, though small in size. By the end of the 1700s there were over 400 inhabitants on Rum living in the windowless black houses, grazing sheep, cattle and goats, and growing grain and potatoes.
And there are the twin peaks of Askerville and Halliwell as we come. In a minute we shall see the ponies. On the left we shall see Rum Nora, the brown pony, and there's one of the prides in the centre. This time I think there were about 20 ponies in the fold on Rum. There's Rum Sheila, and that's Rum Duchess. There's a youngster by Islesman of New Calgary. And this brown mare just coming to the picture's Rum Cherry, who came south to the pound stud, Pat Martin. That's Rum Beauty in the background. That's one of the prides with her foal. And there's Duchess again on the left. And I think that's a Jean, one of the Jeans in the background, Rum Jean. There's Rum Mary again, what an absolutely fabulous mane. And that's Sheila once more, Rum Sheila. Pride again. And there's a bay foal. In a minute you'll see Rum Duayan. Yes, there he is. He came south and stood at the Woodbere stud in Devon for 16 years. And there's his sire, Islesman of New Calgary. Somebody having a roll in the background. There's Islesman again. Shortly after these pictures were taken, Mrs. Warren died, and Elizabeth Compton took on her role as advisor to the Nature Conservancy, and Islesman left Rum and went to the Countess of Swinton at her dyke stud, and was replaced by Glengarry IV. Now we're saying goodbye to Rum and turning our boat towards Mallaig. These are the ponies belonging to Diana Hocking, who took all the pictures on Rum. Diana was always interested in the Western Island type of pony, which she bred here on her Dungale stud in the north of England, near Gateshead in County Durham. This is Dungale Bracken with her colt foal Dungale Crofter. Crofter came south at a later date and was exported to France and lived with Kate Chevalier near Paris. He's only 2 days old here, but quite frisky, as you can see. There he is again with his mother, and in the background, Bracken's 3-year-old daughter, Dungale Heather. There's Dungale Cloud, the foundation mare of this stud, with her colt foal beside her, Dungale Fingal. Dungale Cloud was bred by Sir Arthur Goodson and sired by his stallion Dunee. Sir Arthur was really only interested in breeding hounds. He was an MFH, and he used Dunee on small thoroughbreds to produce a horse for his hunt servants to use hunting on the hill. He only used Dunee on very few pedigree mares, and then he didn't bother to register the progeny, which was a great pity. So Cloudy is only Appendix A. There's Bracken again, her daughter, who was Appendix B, of course. And there's Dungale Heather, 3-year-old. One of Cloudy's daughters, Dungale Mist, came south to Mary Drummond on Exmoor to found her Teardew stud. Dungale Mist and Dungale Heather here were both by Seocaris of New Calgary. I can't begin to pronounce his Gaelic name. It meant sprite, and Diana always called him Puck. By the time this film was taken, Diana had had trouble with grazing and Puck had to go, so both these foals are by Islesman of New Calgary, who by that time was with the Countess of Swinton at her Dykes stud. That's Fingal again, now 5 days old and quite sparky. Diana always broke in all her ponies and rode them herself, including Puck, and there was some really lovely riding round here. There's Bracken saying goodbye, so we'll say goodbye too and go to the Royal Highland Show. And here's the ridden class. This is the under 14 hands. At the Royal Highland Show, the Highland ridden class is divided into 2 heights. There's Mac of Hunthall in the background doing his show. He followed Glengarry IV on Rum. There he comes again, doing his lap of honour, I think, having won this class. Yes, that's right. He didn't remain on Rum very long because he was lent to somebody on the mainland who had a small railway line running across their croft, and most unfortunately Mac of Hunthall was killed by one of the very few trains. A great sadness and a great loss. This is the 14 hands and over class now, the larger Highlands. There's a nice Western Island type. Unfortunately, we don't know how she's bred because we haven't got the catalogue, which is a bit of a pity. But I just wonder if she's one of the Countess of Swindon's breeding, either by Islesman of New Calgary or earlier stallion Dyke St Paddy. In this class you'll see Tony Wood riding Carrot Canna. There he is going to stand him out for the judge. Tony and Sylvia had a riding centre on Exmoor and also bred the Woodhaven Highlands there, and they bought several ponies from Scotland to use over the moor, Carrot Canna being one of them. Here come the 3 winners in that class. Tony on Canna in 3rd place. In a moment you'll see the 1st and 2nd of each of these 2 Highland ridden classes competing for the Ridden Championship, Highland Ridden Championship. Here they come. In a moment we'll see Mac of Hunthall, I think. There he is at the back. He's being pulled in now. He's won the overall championship, and there he is doing his lap of honour. And next, I think we have the mixed mountain and moorland championship, ridden championship. Yes, that's right. Somebody in the background there doing a lot of hard work with the Shetland on the leading rein. Once again, Mac is victorious, and there he is being pulled in. Supreme Mountain and Moorland Ridden Champion of the Royal Highland. There he's doing his lap of honour. Now we shall go back to Rum. And there we are, Pride the 5th, and that's Rum Mari, and that's Old Rum Mary again. On the right, a mouse done Rum Sheena by Islesman of New Calgary. She looks as if she'd got twins, but I think one of the foals belongs to somebody else. And there's another filly by Islesman, that's Rum Ela. All the foals here this year are by Glengarry IV. There's Old Rum Dutch by Dunny. She must be well over 24. And here lying down is a brown gelding by Glengarry IV. I think Elizabeth Compton felt that using Glengarry on Rum would be a good outcross after the 3 New Calgary stallions. But he threw rather a lot of white with these mares, and it wasn't a great success, so he was removed and followed by Mac of Hunthall. That, I think, is Old Rum Beauty. In the background you can see the remains of the old buildings from crofting days, and I think if you look at the terrain that you can understand how difficult it was with the thin soil and the endless outcrop of rock to scrape a living here, and it must have been very hard work for the ponies.
By the time of the infamous Highland clearances, when the peasants were deported to make way for sheep farming and the sport for the laird, Rum's inhabitants were desperately poor, and in 1828 the whole population went to North America. 20 years later, the Marquis of Salisbury bought Rum, and both he and his son took a great interest in the wild ponies that they found on the island. Lord Salisbury brought several from the island to his English estate at Hatfield, just north of London. Having succeeded his father, Lord Arthur Cecil sold Rum to the Campbells, but he continued with his Rum ponies at Hatfield, and then in 1888 the island was sold yet again, and all the livestock was sent to the Oban sales on the mainland. Lord Arthur purchased a few of his ponies for his Hatfield stud. This was fortunate, as when the new owner of Rum, Sir George Buller, began his Rum pony stud, he was able to go to Hatfield for some genuine Rum ponies. Sir George bought several stallions to run on Rum, the most notable being Claymore, who was sired by Rory of the Hills, a Skye pony. Even in 1969, Claymore figured in the female line of every mare on Rum. In 1957, the Nature Conservancy bought the island, and the stud was controlled by Lord Arbuthnot. During his time, his friendship with Mrs. Warren of the New Calgary stud in Sussex had a profound influence on the Rum ponies, as she lent 3 of her stallions in succession to the run on the island. They were McCognac, David of New Calgary, and Islesman of New Calgary. When Mrs. Warren died in 1970, she left all her ponies to the Nature Conservancy, in the hope that her work for the regeneration and improvement of the Western Island type of Highland would continue.
We're going to Rum again. This time we're taking the long boat trip. The boat goes up the Sound of Sleat and then past Egg and going to the north of Rum, right round Canna and back to Rum again. It's a beautiful day, as you can see quite calm. So I'll leave you to enjoy the journey and the lovely scenery, listening to David Mason playing Farewell to the Creeks on his bagpipes. This is Jill Carter, who also bred ponies near Diana at Dungale, and she and Diana came down once to judge our Highland pony gathering at Woodbere. I think we shall shortly be approaching Rum again, and I think that was Rum in the distance. The sea, as you see, is quite calm, but I remember Mrs. Warren dreading this journey. She was a bad sailor, and she often came to Rum when she was advising about the ponies. Yes, there's Halliwell and Askerville, the peaks on Rum, and we're back at Kilmorey with the ponies. That, I think, is Old Rum Beauty. There's a deer. The Nature Conservancy is doing a field research into the deer here, and I think you'll see this one has a collar on. Years ago, when the island belonged to Lord Salisbury and all the population were sent to North America, or had been sent to North America, he imported deer here and started a herd for the purpose of providing sport for himself and his friends. And they brought deer actually up from Exmoor. Seems quite incredible. There's one of the rum prides talking to, I think it might be the warden. That, I think, is an old gelding. There's old Rum Dutch again. Marvellous how she survived the rigours of this climate. Shows you how tough they really are. There's Rum Mary. That, I think, is either Sheena or Ela. They're very alike. Here's a youngster full of beans. And here's Rum Gillian, we saw earlier as a foal, and she came south to Pat Martin's pound stud and bred several foals down here to Claymore Ranger. There's a youngster, I'm sorry I don't know her name. Nice pony in very good condition, one of the older prides again. In the background, Glengarry the Fourth. And one of his foals. There's one of the younger pride family, and there's Glengarry again, and there's a better one of him still. And now we shall say goodbye to Rum.